Welcome to Jammin' with Jason Mefford, a show where we discuss topics relevant to chief audit executives and professionals in audit, risk, and compliance. We discuss the technical and soft skills needed to navigate the minefields of organizations. You hear best practices and practical advice for helping you advance your career, and we'll even talk about music, mindfulness, and psychology, because we can. So sit back and relax while you listen to the #1 podcast in the world for internal auditors, unscripted and unedited. Well, welcome, my friends, to another episode of Jammin' with Jason. I'm excited to be back here with you today, and I'm going to do something a little bit different this week. I'm actually going to share a story with you, and we're going to talk about a concept that kind of goes along with that particular story. So you're going to want to hang around for the whole thing because I'm going to go through, like I said, share a story with you that actually I first heard about 30 years ago. And it's just a story that has kind of stuck with me that I've learned from, and want to kind of incorporate that into the topic that we're going to be discussing today. But before we get to that, a couple of housekeeping items for you. First thing, if you're listening to this, make sure, if you haven't already, to go out and leave me a review. Now, the reason for that is the way the algorithms and everything work on the podcast sites is the more reviews you actually have, the higher things will come in the search results. And so the first thing is, I'm trying to do what I can to make sure that people are aware that this podcast exists, but I need your help. And so there's kind of two things that you can do to be able to help me. And so I would ask you to do that to help me, again, spread the word and out there and get more people actually listening each week. So if you find this valuable, if you're listening every week, here's a couple things that I would like you to do for me. First off is go ahead and share this with everybody that you know. So if you know somebody else that you think would benefit by listening to the podcast each week, friends, colleagues, please make sure to let them know. You could send them an email, a text, however you normally communicate, and say, hey, there's this really great podcast I've been listening to, and I think that you would also benefit from that as well. So that's the first thing to help me, is if you would let others know about this. Because again, my goal is to be here to serve and to provide information and these jam sessions, which usually end up either being me discussing or me interviewing people, and have that be relevant for chief audit executives and professionals in internal audit, risk, and compliance. Not a lot out there for our people. And so, like I said, just the more people that are aware of it, I would be really appreciative. The second thing is, as I mentioned before, the podcast services usually they have algorithms and other stuff for search. And the more people that are actually providing or leaving feedback and comments about the podcast, especially if you really love this and want to give it a 5-star rating, the more people that actually do that, it helps in a couple of ways. First off, I don't actually know how many people are listening each week. That's one thing about a podcast. You don't really know how many people are subscribing and actually listening every single week. So leaving a review helps me know that people are actually listening. And it also helps in search results. So for example, if somebody's, let's say in internal audit and says, hey, I'd like to listen to a podcast on internal audit, if they type search in the search bar and put internal audit in there, leaving reviews will help this to actually get raised in the search results so that people can actually find it. Now, excuse me. The other thing too is if you leave me a review and actually write a review and let me know what you really like about the podcast and maybe some things you'd like to see in the future, that will provide me with feedback so that I can always be improving what I'm actually doing and providing to you. So like I said, that would really help me if you will do that. If you're listening to this on iTunes or Apple Podcasts right now, actually, while you're listening to this episode, if you go back to the main page for Jammin' with Jason, scroll to the bottom, that's where you can actually leave a review. So take a minute as you're listening, just go back to that, scroll down, give us a 5-star review, and then put in some comments in that review as well. And like I said, that would really help me, and I would really appreciate that. So as I started off with, you'll notice I said a couple times, I need your help. And that's kind of the concept that we want to talk about, that I want to talk about today with you, is that we all need help. And, I think sometimes, especially for people like me, I was raised to be very independent. My parents taught me that I was, supposed to pull my boots on and stand up and pull my big boy pants on and actually do things and not really rely on other people, but that it was up to me to get things done. And so I've always had this very independent spirit that, I can just accomplish and do everything that I need to. As I've gotten older, hopefully I've gotten a little wiser, and I realize that while that is important, we all need some help from time to time. And the more that we reach out and actually get the help of others, the better all of us are. Because working on things, doing things together, we can make much more progress than we can if we are all individually doing it by ourselves. And so, and what I found too, being a chief audit executive 2 times, is the further you go up in your career, the more we kind of believe we don't need help because we've already kind of gotten there. But the reality is that's the time when we probably need the most help. And the reason for that is often we are kind of alone. We don't have the same peer groups that we did as we were at lower levels in our career. And often the challenges that we're dealing with are much bigger. They have much more of an impact on our organizations and on us personally. And so, at sometimes those times when you feel like, well, I've already made it, I don't need any help now, that's actually the time when you probably need the help the most. And like I said, I know it's a little ironic, but I've seen that on in my career as well. And so just kind of throwing that out there. If you don't feel like you need help, you probably are the one who really does need help. And towards the end of the podcast, I'll talk a little bit more about that, because I wanted to move now into sharing a story with you that kind of illustrates this concept. Now, I'm actually going to read it to you because this happens to be, and like I said, this was a story that I heard probably 30 years ago. And it's an old urban legend that, based on kind of my research, showed up in print somewhere in the late 1800s to early 1900s. And it's been redone in kind of some different formats and slightly different wording and slightly different context. But the one that I'm going to use is called a bricklayer's accident report. And this is really it's kind of a funny story about what can happen when we try to do the job alone. And so you'll see, again, as I was talking before, we all need help, and we all need the help of others. And sometimes when you try to do things by yourself, you end up hurting yourself. So this version was actually one. It was I think this happened to be one that was published by somebody in Australia. Because it was kind of talking about workers' compensation issues and the fact of, if an employee tries to do certain things by themselves, the things that can actually happen. And so the way this version of the story is written is the fact that, this person who was injured at work, this bricklayer who was injured at work, is actually responding to a letter of inquiry. So he got hurt, he filled out a workers' comp claim, And this group is sending him a letter saying, hey, can you explain this to us? Because we're not quite sure what actually happened. So let me go through and just read this story to you right now. And then we're going to talk about kind of the concept again at the end. So again, imagine that this person is writing a letter back. And it says, Dear Sir, I am writing in response to your request for additional information in Block 3 of the accident report form. I put poor planning as the cause of my accident. You asked for a fuller explanation, and I trust the following details will be sufficient. I am a bricklayer by trade. On the day of the accident, I was working alone on the roof of a new 6-story building. When I completed my work, I found that I had some bricks left over, which later were found to be slightly in excess of 500 pounds. Rather than carry the bricks down by hand, I decided to lower them in a barrel by using a pulley which was attached to the side of the building on the 6th floor. Securing the rope at the ground, I went up to the roof, swung the barrel out, and loaded the bricks into it. Then I went down and untied the rope, holding it slightly to ensure a slow descent of the bricks. You will note in Block 11 of the accident report form that I weigh 175 pounds. Due to my surprise at being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded at a rapid rate up the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel, which was now proceeding downward at an equal impressive speed. This explained the fractured skull, minor abrasions, and the broken collarbone as listed in Section 3 of the accident report form. Slowed only slightly, I continued my rapid ascent, not stopping until my fingers of my right hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley. Fortunately, by this time, I had regained my presence of mind and was able to hold tightly to the rope in spite of beginning to experience a great deal of pain. At approximately the same time, however, the barrel of bricks hit the ground and the bottom fell out of the barrel. Now devoid of the weight of the bricks, that barrel weighed approximately 50 pounds. I refer you again to my weight. As you can imagine, I began a rapid descent down the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming up. This accounts for the 2 fractured ankles, broken tooth, and several lacerations on my legs and lower body. Here, my luck began to change slightly. The encounter with the barrel seemed to slow me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell into the pile of bricks, and fortunately only 3 vertebrae were cracked. I am sorry to report, however, as I lay there on the pile of bricks in pain, unable to move, I again lost my composure and presence of mind and let go of the rope. As I lay there watching the empty barrel begin its journey back down onto me, this explains the 2 broken legs. I hope this answers your inquiry. Now, again, it's kind of a silly story, but like I said, this is something that is, I heard a different version of it about 30 years ago, and I've heard several different versions since then. But this, I think, really kind of shows, again, this man, encountered all of these different things, broken vertebrae, legs, fractured skull, all these different things because he was trying to do the job by himself. And I get it. We're told to do things ourselves and to be independent, just like I talked about before. But when we choose to do things by ourselves, often things like this may happen. Now, I'm not saying if you do things by yourself like this that you're going to get broken legs and everything else like is in this story. But sometimes that is the case. I'm going to share a story with you about me here in just a minute. And so again, but what I want to bring home to you is the fact that doing it by yourself is okay. We need to have this independent spirit, but we need to also have the help of others. Because invariably what will happen is when we try to do things by ourselves, when we know we need help, but we think we're just going to push through, we're just going to make it because we can do this, even though in the back of our mind we know we need some help, we end up just like this bricklayer. Now, it might not be broken bones, but it can be other things, emotional, mental, psychological issues that we have to deal with. So let me tell you the story about myself. And this actually did lead to a broken bone. Okay. I've done a lot of kind of crazy stuff in my life. I've got a lot of cuts and scratches and bruises throughout my life, but I have only ever broken a bone one time. And it was a bone on my hand. And here's kind of the story of me trying to do something by myself. So my wife and I had just moved into a new home, and the closet, where we put our clothes, was too small. And so I went down to IKEA and I bought a new little kind of portable or closet wardrobe that I could actually put in our room to be able to hang up my clothes on. And so this was it was a big piece of furniture. It was probably almost 8 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. And of course, with IKEA furniture, if you've ever dealt with that, you bring it home in boxes, and then you have to put it together. And so again, I grew up as the son of a contractor, and so I was very familiar with tools and putting things together. So I started putting this thing together by myself. Now, of course, in the instructions from IKEA, it has the little pictures that show, don't do this by yourself, and shows a picture of 2 people. But again, I thought, no, I can do this. This is no problem. This is easy. I've put together lots of furniture like this before. And so I just started putting it together. I got the whole thing together. And one part of the story that I didn't tell you is we chose to get the front doors on the wardrobe we got were mirrored. And so the doors were actually quite heavy because we wanted to be able to have that mirror in our room as well. So I put everything together, I got it all situated and set it up, pushed it up against the wall. And again, normally, the furniture just sits there nicely. Another part of the story is our bedroom had carpet in it. So I pushed everything back up into the corner. It was sitting there perfectly, looked wonderful, just like it needed to be. So I thought, okay, this is great. I open the door and I start to try to put some of my clothes into the wardrobe, thinking that I was all done. Now, when I did that, the weight of the doors and the weight of the clothes in the wardrobe caused it to fall over on top of me. Now, just like the bricklayer, all of a sudden, there I was lying on the ground with this wardrobe of clothes on top of me. Now, it didn't damage the wardrobe, but I was rather not in a good emotional state. And so I slammed my hand down on the floor in a fit of anger and didn't realize that there happened to be something on the floor right there. And exactly where I hit, all of a sudden, immediately, I could feel the pain and the swelling in my hand. And I looked down and I could see that my finger was not right. It was sticking out a way that it is not supposed to be sticking out. And so I had to go down to the doctor, get it set, all those kind of things. Now, why am I telling you this story? Because again, like I said, we all need help from time to time. And because I chose not to have someone else help me with a job that I really knew I probably needed help with, but I chose to ignore that and thought, nope, I'm just going to do this by myself. The problem was it ended up leading to me breaking my finger. Now, it ended up that I had a cast all the way up my arm, or up to my elbow on it, because they had to mobilize it and put it in place. I had to live with that for the next 4 to 6 weeks, even while I was traveling around the world and trying to figure out how to put my clothes on with one hand because I couldn't use my left hand. So again, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is to realize that when we need help, it's okay to reach out and ask for help. You know, certain things are out there. We have groups of friends, we have other things like that. And let me tell you the truth, you know, a lot of times we are hesitant to ask for help because it actually takes courage. It takes courage to admit that we need someone else's help. But what I'll tell you from, you know, my personal life and my career, the more we try to go alone without having the help of others, eventually it catches up to us. And just like my broken hand, we end up all having some of those things that happen. Now, in our career, it might not be a broken bone, but it might be getting fired. It might be, you know, looking like an idiot in the company and having to deal with the political fallout from that. There's lots of different ways that this can show up. And so again, you know, like I said at the beginning, if you're someone who feels like you don't need anybody's help, chances are you need help more than other people do. And it's time for you to actually have that courage to reach out and help other people. Because, you know, when we do that, when we try to do things by ourselves, often we end up feeling alone and isolated. And we just think, if I just push harder, I'm going to make it through. Everything is going to be fine. But what is actually going on inside of us is often we feel like we're carrying this huge weight with us. And if you've ever carried something that is very, very heavy, you can do it for a while, but eventually your legs and everything else start to get very tired, and we end up risking falling down. And that can happen, like I said, emotionally, mentally, or physically in our lives. And so, you know, again, it's better at that point to actually ask for help. You know, join groups, get in a mastermind group, join a forum like the Chief Audit Executive Forum that I have, where you can actually get the support and the help of others. Because like I said, when we try to do things by ourselves, inevitably we end up hurting ourselves. So don't do it alone. Don't be like the bricklayer. Don't be like me breaking my hand because I was afraid or thought I could do it on my own when I should have been reaching out for help. So that's kind of the message today is, you know, realize that it's perfectly okay to reach out for help. If you need help, find a coach, find a mentor, join groups or other things like that where you can actually, you know, get answers to your questions, get the support of other people around you, because when you do, I promise, we are stronger together than we are all individually. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap it up. Now, I did want to let you know, too, the Chief Audit Executive Forum that I run, we're going to be opening that up to membership again in just a little bit. We only open that up a couple times a year. And so if you're a chief audit executive and feel like you would like to get some help from other people as well, and join a group of like-minded people where you can have, you know, frank and open conversations that are confidential with your peers, just to let you know, that's going to be opening up again later in August. Now, if you are interested in this and would like to kind of get a jump start on everybody else, I have created a wait list. And so I'll leave a link here and on the website that if you're interested in something like this, I would encourage you to get yourself added to the wait list. Click on the link, go out, add yourself to the wait list. Because here's how the process works. I go through and interview everybody to see if they are actually a fit for the group, because you have to apply for membership and you have to be allowed into the group. And it's on a first come, first served basis. So when I fill up and the number of people that are going to be let in this time, when I have that number of people, it's over. And so sometimes, again, we might not even get outside of the wait list, and it may not actually go to the public for them to be able to sign up. So on the wait list, you actually find out before everyone else does when it's actually ready to open. So that way you can get your application in before other people do, to make sure that you are at the front of the line. So again, if that's something that's of interest to you, I've got the links down below so that you can go ahead and sign up for that, because we will be opening that up later this month. So with that, my friends, go out, have a great week, and remember, don't try to do the job alone. Make sure that you have the support of others, and when you do need help, have the courage to actually reach out, ask for help, and be there for others when they need help as well. So with that, have a great week, and I will see you on a future episode of Jammin' with Jason. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Jamming with Jason. Keep on rocking in the audit world. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you later on the next show. If you'd like to earn continuing professional education for listening to today's episode, head on over to C-Risk Academy at ondemand.criskacademy.com. And that's C as in the letter C, riskacademy.com. Not only do you get a CPE certificate, but you also will have access to the video version of today's show. The views and opinions expressed on this show are that of the individuals and not of their respective organizations.